Welcome everybody who's here so far. We're just going to give it all the way up to 1:45 before we get started. Just make sure you've muted your audio and all things are put together, and we'll get started in just a little bit, okay? All right, greetings everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining us for another HMI Webinar Wednesday. We're glad you're with us. We've got a really full audience today. I'm very excited about it. My name is Katie Terry. I am one of the program coordinators in the Department of Health Management and Informatics. I get to work with our students and I get to work with our community partners on the academic side as well as our communications and outreach. So I'm super glad you're all here today and I'm really excited to get started. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we're letting more people in. This is a live webinar event, so you want to make sure you keep yourself on mute and making sure that all of your information is protected. Most of the conversation is going to be between myself and our guests today, but we are opening up questions to our audience members. So utilize the chat function to send any questions that you might have for our panelist, and then we'll fire those at him during the Q&A toward the end. But without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you all today's guest. It's Mr. Mark Crandall. He is the president of Nearshore Technology. Mr. Crandall, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Go ahead and give us a little bit about yourself and what do you do at Nearshore Technology?
Sure. Thanks, Katie. It's great to be here and to be speaking with students, undergrads and grad students in such an important university and an important program at UCF. My name is Mark Crandall. I am the president of Nearshore Technology, and we are a firm that provides IT services to health tech and fintech companies all across the United States. My education is formally in decision and information sciences at the University of Florida. And I'm just really happy to be here today and speak a little bit about how healthcare has changed, and specifically how data in healthcare has so drastically changed over the last 20 years and some of my experiences there.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So now that everybody has a little bit better, we're going to dive really deep into getting to know you and your journey. If you could tell us about your journey, your career path, what types of challenges did you face getting to the point that you are today?
Sure. So I started as an undergrad in engineering and quickly found a home in decision and information sciences, which is called management information services in other universities, and was really intrigued in how information technology can further the progress in so many different industries, particularly in the healthcare sciences. It's interested me from the very beginning. I did some consulting right out of while I was getting my graduate degree at University of Florida, and that's when I really started to get interested in consulting and having that kind of consistent change. As each day came, there was different problems to solve for different companies, and I really fell in love with that. I started consulting, as I said, right out of school. I went down to South Florida and started consulting with a spinoff from Cambridge Technology Partners up in Boston. It was called Breakaway Solutions. And I then was able to travel to Europe and Latin America and met all sorts of great and interesting people and interesting companies. And then when that company was really focused on .com, and when that bubble burst at the end of 1999, 2000, I found myself looking for my next opportunity and decided to go out on my own, work with a small consulting firm out in Denver and in LA, out in Southern California, and really just got very interested in how to make a career out of helping companies do more with the data that they have and do more with fewer resources. And so that was wonderful, and ended up starting my own firm of management consultants here in the Orlando area. And one of my clients at the time was one of the largest senior healthcare services provider in the United States, and the largest one in Florida. And I got to listen to the interview that you did with the two nursing home administrators last month, which was really great, because that's exactly what Consulate was all about, was taking care of our seniors in Florida and up the East Coast. And I served as the chief information officer for that company for 6 years, which was just, there were a ton of challenges as far as interoperability between the different points of care, from the hospital systems that gave us a lot of our residents and patients, the journey home for some of our residents and patients from the long-term care setting, and making sure that the healthcare providers all along that continuum had just a perfect understanding of the holistic care that went into serving each one of our residents. I did that for about 6 years, and then I was approached by an old colleague of mine who had started Nearshore Technology about 7 years ago. And he had grown it. It was a family business. He and his wife had grown it to about a $15-16 million company. And he approached me and said, I'd really like to take this company to that next level. And would I be interested in joining him? And so I made the very difficult decision of leaving Consulate in the first quarter of this year, just as COVID was starting, and ventured out to run this consulting company. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 months. It's just been it's been an amazing time. We're poised for growth, and I'm really excited about it. And so that's how I got to where I am today.
Wow, that's quite the journey. But I think it's so important for, our attendees, our students, to see how that journey can change from one thing to the next, all the different things that you've touched, working just in that information technology side of things. Speaking of, you just got in there 10 months ago when COVID first started up. What have you seen that's really impacted the IT side or the technology side of healthcare with COVID going on?
Well, it's amazing, because I think one of the most rewarding things that I found is we are helping some of the largest medical technology firms in the United States with the software and hardware that is important in fighting this disease. And that is just, an amazing feeling to wake up every morning and know that some of our consultants are working on the software or the devices that are testing for COVID, as quickly as possible. Some of the traceability analysis is is part of one of the projects that we're working on. So it's just so rewarding to be able to actually be part of it. I think outside of being a healthcare provider and being in the mix and helping patients or running facilities that care for patients, the technology consulting and figuring out how to go further faster in that journey of solving some of the most difficult problems is really rewarding.
Right. That might kind of be one of the things that you mentioned here, but in your experience, what makes healthcare technology or healthcare IT and information management different from other IT fields?
Well, that's a great question. So in my earlier consulting days, when I was consulting for everything from retail to homeland security to finance to healthcare, it was really interesting in some of the problems that healthcare is grappling with today or 5 years ago have been solved in other industries before then. And so healthcare seems to be on the back end of the evolution and the adoption of technology that has solved similar problems in other industries. And so that well-rounded view of how information technology has been used to solve problems has been extremely helpful in looking at particular healthcare or healthcare provider issues. So that well-rounded look at other industries has given me a kind of a different perspective than someone who has been only exposed to healthcare their entire career.
Right. That's a really good point to make. You had mentioned in there about the differing issues. So we'll kind of touch on that. But first, what would you say does a typical day or week look like for you? Not just at Nearshore, but like in the grand scheme of things when you're doing consulting with the other healthcare IT, what does it look like for you?
Well, that's a great question too. It's in my current role, it really is about managing client expectations and balancing the different constraints that our clients are dealing with every day, whether that's cost, time, the scope of the work that we're doing. Consulting is really about listening to understand, and then aligning your goals with your client's goals. And so that is what I try to do every single day. There's a ton of administrative stuff as well, to make sure that the kind of the lifeblood data that runs our professional services organization is showing us the red flags that need to be attended to tactically, perhaps in that kind of emergent situation, but also making sure that we're spending time in what I refer to as quadrant 2, which is more strategic thinking. Where are we going to be a year from now, 2 years from now? And how do we set ourselves up today to be successful, to be successful then? And it's no different than some of the healthcare providers that we're helping every single day. They are struggling with the same things, right? How do they become more efficient? How do they use automation or use IT to free up their resources to be more innovative, right? Because a lot of the money that is being spent in healthcare is to maintain legacy systems or to just keep the lights on. What we're trying to do every day is free up that money so that our clients can innovate in the healthcare space. And there's so much opportunity if you're listening for those challenges and listening for how you can apply some of your problem solving from other experiences. You bring every experience that you gain throughout schooling and personal relationships, professional relationships, networking. You bring all of that experience to bear on the issue of the day or the issue of the quarter or the issue of the coming years, and you just become very effective at incorporating that knowledge into a strategy going forward for both you and for the people that you serve.
Right. I like that you mentioned that it's about experiences. So we're going to go a little deeper. Do you have an example or a time of one of the first mistakes you made in your career when working in healthcare IT?
Let's see, one of the first mistakes.
Or like the most impactful that you learned so much from it that you still apply it to today?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned very early was that you have to be able to influence without direct authority. And what I mean by that is if you are and it doesn't have to be as a consultant. If you are working in an organization or planning to work in an organization, you have to understand how to demonstrate confidence and demonstrate understanding of a particular challenge and be able to influence those around you um, without coming across heavy-handed and without coming across as someone who's coming in to make drastic change just for change's sake. And I think one of the first things that I learned, and this was not with a healthcare client, but the experience is just as relevant, is I had made a suggestion about upgrading some talent within one of the pieces of an organization. And I didn't say it quite right. It was up on a PowerPoint slide, and the way it was phrased, it really made the people in that organization very upset. And so I then started receiving emails with, people with pitchforks that are coming after me. And it was a great group to work with, but I had just struck a wrong chord. And so it's very important to figure out how you can increase your influence without the direct authority to do so. As president of a consulting company, I'm in a blessed position in that if I make a decision on the strategy of how we're going to go forward, I kind of say this is what we're going to do. When you're earlier in your career, you will very rarely have that kind of control, and so you have to figure out how to persuade and get your point across without coming off as a know-it-all that hasn't been in the industry for very long. So that was one of the first, and I remember it. I remember it to this day. Giving that presentation that I thought was going to be, was going to land so great, and then I ended up, there was a software engineering team that didn't care whether I ever showed up to their office again. So.
Everyone will have that story of the one lesson.
Everybody goes through it. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. So I love hearing about it from people that have gotten to a point where they're presidents of a company, because that's that one lesson that you never forget, no matter how far you go. But on the flip side of that, do you have one particular or maybe a small grouping of really big successes that throughout your career you're like, wow, this is what we did, and this is what it did, and this is how many people it impacted? A great success story?
Wow, I think, my time at Consulate serving our seniors, I just can't say enough about how impactful that has been in my life. I'll tell a little story about how I got started with them. I was doing some consulting, normal portfolio management. So it was going in and understanding, okay, if I've got $10 million as an IT budget, and I'm going to, I've got to spend $6 million of that on X, and then this $4 million has to be kind of strategically portioned out for the innovation that we're trying to do. That was a very typical management consulting practice within an IT organization of a large healthcare provider. And there was some reorganization that was going on at the time, and the CEO called me up to his office and said, I'm not sure what you're doing here, but I get bills from you every month. So could you please explain yourself? And so I talked him through what I was doing, and after working with him for a couple of months, he said, I'd really like for you to join me on my executive team and be the chief information officer. So basically the person who runs all of IT for the healthcare provider. And I looked at him and I said, I love consulting so much. I can't imagine leaving behind, the consulting practice and that variety that I see every month, every quarter as new clients are being serviced. And so I said, thank you very much. But, I think I'm going to stay where I am. I said, I'll help you find the right person, happy to do it. And he said, understood. And then a couple months later, he invited me to go to their conference where they brought in, if you heard the two gentlemen that were nursing home administrators last month, it was 150 of those nursing home administrators, because 150 care centers or so, it was probably 175 at that time. And they all came to Orlando to talk about how they can serve their patients, how they can serve their residents better. So it was the nursing home administrators, it was the clinical services leads at each of the buildings, the medical directors, it was a huge group of people that came together. And I had been just focused on IT. So, I was focused on data centers and moving zeros and ones around and making sure that Wi-Fi was in the building so that we could eventually go to an electronic health record system. I was really focused. I don't even think at that time I had stepped foot in a care center because that just wasn't my role. And so when I met the people who day in and day out were operating these buildings and caring for 110, 120 people day in and day out, and hearing some of the challenges that they were having, it was absolutely eye-opening. The passion that these people felt for the residents, and it was almost overwhelming to see those people come together to try to solve the challenges of not having enough of one thing or the other to come together. And so I went up to the CEO after the conference and I said, you know what, I changed my mind. I would love to join you as an executive on the team and do what I can to help. And the following 6 years, I went to a lot of care centers, and that made a huge difference. So you all are already positioning yourselves to be in the thick of it, in the action in healthcare, trying to figure out how we deliver healthcare better in the United States. And I would say that it was so rewarding to actually be in the care centers and seeing what the tools that my team was able to provide to the practitioners to give them more time with their patients. It was just, it was, don't waste the opportunity to see the people that you're helping, because I guarantee it'll be one of the most rewarding things that you do.
Thank you for saying that. It is really important. Our healthy IT side, you get a lot of the administrative side of things, and you don't get much to see the end user, the end
That's right.
result. So definitely a good point to make.
Yeah, we're not allowed to touch the people. we're not licensed to actually provide care, but let me tell you, we in IT and healthcare, we can make a huge difference. And I've taken that into the consulting organization here at Nearshore. I have that same passion for our clients, and I think that's so critical. And teaching people passion is not an easy thing, but if you live it and we do town halls every month, because COVID is here, so it's not like everybody is in the office. So we do these Zoom town halls, and we talk about the good news. What are we doing each day to impact our clients' lives for the better? And COVID and the help that we're giving in the organizations that are helping fight that battle is just, it's super rewarding.
Right. Speaking of COVID, we've talked about it a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, what would you say, or what do you think is the most challenging thing facing health information technology right now?
The most challenging thing for healthcare technology. I think that the interoperability is still, if I had to pick something, that free flow of information that's secure between providers. It's better than it was 5 years ago, but it still has a long way to go. I mean, I kind of came up through a time where systems were very, very proprietary, and that it was very difficult for large systems to share data from one to another. And to a good extent, that is still the case, but a lot of evolution in interoperability has happened over the last 5 years. And so I think I know that that's improving, but I would still have to say that free but secure sharing of appropriate patient data, so that we're not looking at fax machines or PDFs that have no useful data attributes that can be gleaned into an electronic health record system. That's huge. Regulation is another thing that in the healthcare industry makes it very challenging. You heard a little bit about that last month, and it certainly is a concern to be able to be compliant with all of the regulations, but still have that kind of uninterrupted flow of information that gives the practitioners what they need right when they need it.
Right. Yeah. The regulations. And have you seen a lot of, activity when it comes to the security? I know we've got a couple of our faculty doing research in the data security for patient records and stuff like that.
Oh, yes. I mean, it is a consistent concern, and audits go on all the time. I mean, there's always, the smallest thing can turn into something very, very big if it's not treated the right way. You can't sacrifice the confidence that your organization has around protecting patient data. It's just, there's no room for error there. And so human behavior is, one of the most difficult things to control and manage, and it is one of the leading causes of security breaches. It's not so much your firewalls as it is, phishing attacks or human behavior that causes issues. So data security will always be a high focus. I mean, I think when I started, there was no such thing as a CISO, and now it's one of the most important players in the organization, and has board attention, has the CEO's attention. The technologists have much more influence now on decisions that are made in the boardroom, which is awesome. I mean, it's really fun to be a part of the strategic planning of companies in the healthcare space.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're going to rewind time just a little bit, and we're going to go back to when you graduated college. Now,
Okay.
Even though you graduated from UF, we're not going to hold it against you since you're our partner now. But you did mention that you did start into consulting right out of graduation. What steps did you take to get your first job?
So I was thinking of that because I knew you would probably ask that, and I can't actually remember. I was actually doing consulting on the side while I was in grad school, which that is not something that I would fully recommend, because you tend to get spread a little bit thin. But I had very understanding mentors in my graduate program, and so I don't remember how I started consulting with a local insurance company in Gainesville, but that's how it started. I don't know whether I was just looking for something to do in IT. Not necessarily in any specific space, but I walked in and started listening to some of the problems that this company was having. And I said, oh, I can help with those. And so put a plan together, put what was a statement of work basically together for this organization. And that's how it started. So I really went out and found an opportunity to serve in the community and in a private organization. But what I absolutely love about UCF, and so let me talk about my connection to UCF just for a second, so that
Absolutely.
It's all about the Gators, because it's not. But I was appointed I guess this was 3 years ago now, but by President Hitt to the UCF Research Foundation Board. And so have been in that position now for a couple of years, and absolutely love working with the organization that is in charge of taking an academic idea and commercializing it. It's extremely interesting work. The other connection, which is even a little bit more near and dear to my heart, is the intern program with UCF. When I was at Consulate, I said, we need to find some students that are interested in gaining some experience with a paid internship that will give them exposure to big data and project management in the service of a healthcare organization. And and I won't mention any names because I wouldn't want to embarrass anybody, but we have had some of the best, and I still say we because Consulate is still kind of like my family, but Consulate has a couple of employees that came out as UCF interns and are still there today and are just amazing. Their work ethic is amazing. They're strategic problem solvers, which, that is something, that is a skill that has to be continually honed. And so the relationship that I've had with UCF has been just absolutely fantastic.
That's so great to hear, because we definitely get super proud of our interns and our partnerships. But speaking on that, speaking to some of our students that are in the program that are either in their internships or getting ready for their internships or even their first job, what are 3 skills that you think that students should refine or develop to be truly successful in their internships or their jobs in health IT?
Okay, so first and foremost, it is a special type of listening that is not all that common, and it's listening to understand. A lot of people, when they're in a situation, especially if it's high stress, and which any first job, any first opportunity is going to be high stress, they tend to listen in order to reply. And really what I would say is, if you can practice active listening, it is a skill that will serve you in every single facet of your life, not just your professional career, your personal relationships. That is absolutely critical. And even though I was, CIO, which is an employee of a multi-billion-dollar healthcare company, I always had a consultant's hat on. And that truly means to listen to issues, listen for areas where you can help, and then, once you have that understanding, really apply it to the challenge that banks on the experience that you have had. If you're an active listener, that's critical. Problem solving is the next one that I think is absolutely critical, to be able to break down large problems into chunks that are more easily solved, and come with solutions. Come with ideas. They won't always be right on. That it won't always be the right solution. But whenever you confront a challenge, don't just bring the challenge up to whoever your sponsor is, whether that's your first manager or head of whoever is looking over your internship. Come with ideas, right? Problem solve. That is a critical. And then I think, especially as young folks or younger folks, I guess, figure out something that you can be the best at, right? There's a book, if you haven't heard of Jim Collins, he's a great author. He wrote a book called Good to Great, and he talks about a hedgehog concept. And that is, for companies, it's the one thing that they can absolutely be the best at. And that becomes your where your focus is. That's where you invest your resources and your time to find the right talent, right? Do that for yourself. What are the things that you feel like you can be the absolute best at? And then when you go to work for organizations, find out what that organization's hedgehog concept is, right? Because if if you are in the position to work for a company that has a hedgehog concept defined, the strategy and the tactics all surround that hedgehog concept. That organization is one that has the potential to be great. So I would say be picky about who you choose to work with, right? Know the value that you bring, and then look for the ways that you can apply your best talent to that organization.
Very nice. So piggybacking off of that, let's say an intern or a possible employee is sitting in front of you. What are some things that would jump out at you and be like, yeah, I want this person?
So, you know, that is something that it doesn't normally take a long time to figure out, right? You can tell if someone is engaged and someone is, you know, interested in the problems that I may have to solve, why I'm trying to fill that position. There are certain block and tackle things like, you know, do the research, know what the company does, you know, before you sit in front of them at Consulate. You know, every new person that worked in IT, I spent 10 minutes with them. I would never not never. I would try not to overrule. You know, if a hiring manager really wanted to add this person to their team, very rarely would I ever say, well, wait a second, did you think about this? Just based on the 10 minutes, right? But in 10 minutes, I can tell if someone's passionate about their skill set, passionate to want to learn, have taken some time to understand what challenges might be being faced by the company that you're interviewing for. And don't be afraid to bring the experience, bring some of the academic knowledge that you've gained to the conversation, right? I want to know someone is confident in their skill set and their desire to make a difference. And that, you know, that really, I label it passion, and you know it when you see it.
Right, for sure. All right, so this last question is kind of twofold, and then we'll open it up to our attendees. And remember, go ahead if you have any questions, put them in the chat function, and we'll present them to Mark here. But twofold. So first, what is one thing that you think students can do today to, you know, work toward their professional goals, right? And then the second part of that is the other general advice that you would give to them just starting out, whether it be their first semester in the healthcare IT program or health informatics and information management, or they're getting ready to graduate and start their first job.
So what can you do today? I think it comes down to, you know, the dedication that you all are investing now in your education, whether that's undergrad or grad school. That's just a huge indicator, right, of your commitment to this field. I went through a very tumultuous, circuitous route to decision information sciences. I think I probably took 3 years longer to get through my studies than was my original plan. But you know, I was kind of a wanderer in school because I was excited about so many things that I didn't stay long enough to I didn't have that focus to get through school as quickly as maybe I could have. But that is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, they're you know, experience as much as possible during this time. There are so many resources now, so many more than when I was in school. If something sparks your interest, you know, follow that thread, right? Pull on that thread, because what you want to be able to do is you want to demonstrate that you know, how you differentiate yourself as you start to enter the workforce is truly your attitude and your passion for something. And so don't just go through the motions, right? Figure out what makes you excited about what you're studying and you know, delve into it. And you know, you may change courses within your studies, And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's invest in this time really wisely, and that, you know, I remember my my days as a student. It was awesome. It was a great time. But what and part of and I remember a lot of that stuff very fondly. But the investment in myself and my studies, and how that came across in my first couple of sit downs with opportunities. I mean, it made a big difference.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We do have a ton of questions coming in. I'm very excited about this. So first, we have two students ask kind of the same question, Janae and Dennis. Are there specific certifications that you think can be more valuable to your resume in pursuit of a job in health informatics?
Okay, so, and I don't want to plug an organization one over another, but I'll just say, project management is a wonderful skill to have, no matter what industry you're in. So if you have some formal training in project management methodology, and when it comes to IT, you'll probably hear a lot of different things about Scrum and Agile and Waterfall, and, you know, I mean, when I was coming up, Waterfall was pretty much all there was. Now it's much rarer to find Waterfall than Agile, and I love Agile. That consistent iteration that you have with project stakeholders. I know I always say clients because I'm just a consultant at heart, but this goes for anywhere, whether you're part of a healthcare provider or an insurance company, whatever it is. If you have an understanding of constraints and how to best move through a project, keeping stakeholders happy by continual communication, iterating through deliverables so that you don't go away for 3 months and come back and say, ta-da, and then you've missed the mark, right? Those communication strategies that there are formal certifications in Agile methods, I would highly recommend. And that is for anyone. If I were talking to a group of professionals in IT that had nothing to do with healthcare, I would say the same thing. So project management, program management, that kind of stuff, it helps to have some formal training. So I would add that to the more healthcare specific certifications that you might encounter as you go through your education.
That is really good to know. On that note, just to let our students know, LinkedIn Learning also has introduction into Agile project management, and you do have access through your handshake as a UCF student. So thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. That's a really good point.
Sure.
Yeah. So our next question comes from DJ. Are there any specific types of software that you're using at Nearshore or that are pretty common in the industry?
So I guess it really depends. The entire tech stack in developing applications for the healthcare industry, it's very much mobile first in a lot of different healthcare providers right now. So understanding how to build software applications that are at least mobile ready, if not native to a mobile platform, very, very powerful. Your ability to communicate via things, like PowerPoint or whatever Google's product is, really, really important. And so if you're trying to figure out how best to communicate, to be able to distill your ideas down to a slide or a memo is critical. And so being able to communicate with visualizations is critical. So if you're interested in data and how data can be turned into actionable information, we're a Microsoft partner. I've been a Microsoft partner for as long as I can remember. Power BI and understanding how you can really develop some interesting self-service analytics to power users that, I mean, you couldn't do 6 years ago. I mean, it truly has come a long way. So I know I kind of ran a spectrum there, and happy to be more specific if there's additional questions.
Yeah, there's so many questions. So we'll jump around a bit. Our next couple of questions are more to your experience and your day-to-day duties. So Felicia's asking about, what are like two duties that you're doing, and then Sarah is asking, what's your day-to-day tasks look like? So what are your responsibilities for the day, and what does that day look like?
So I'll focus a little bit on and what I would expect for any manager, myself included, is my main responsibility is growing people. And so if I were to give you all some advice on what to look for when you're going out and picking the multitude of companies that your education is going to be able to afford you the opportunity, look for organizations where the managers invest in their people. And how I do that is spend one-on-one time with each of my managers. So the chief technology officer, who's been with the company for 7 years, wonderful individual, very, very bright. And he and I talk strategy for, an hour or two or three every single week. And the time that I spend with him for his growth and for my growth is just, it's really, really valuable. So to distill that, one-on-ones with management is really, really critical. If you're in an organization that doesn't have a management staff that invests in their people, I think that is much less ideal than an organization. And I used to say this at Consulate. I had 14 managers, in the room for an IT manager's discussion, and at least once a month, maybe twice a month, because we met twice a month, I would say, remember, your job is not to work on projects, right? I know that that's going to happen, but your job is to grow your people. Figure out how to make your individual contributors, your team members, happy to be there and happy to grow. And so that's one of the duties that I take most seriously. Another one, without getting into the administrative stuff, I think client outreach, right, and understanding the needs and how they're evolving with our clients is critical. So I invest part of my time in growing the management team, and then part of my time listening to understand what our clients need. And I think that those two things, if that's all I did, I feel like I would have a certain amount of success in the role.
Very nice. All right, so Lexi wants to talk a little bit more about the HIT. With healthcare costs being a major issue right now, do you think cost is starting to decrease and quality is improving?
So I'll take the second one first. I think that quality is improving. I think that there is so much focus around the measurement of outcomes. And I think what you'll learn, or probably already know, is it's very, very difficult to improve what you don't measure. And that is true in all aspects of your professional career. You should continually strive to have metrics that you are keeping track of every single quarter, right? And that, I mean, obviously that could be grades, that can be, how much networking am I doing as a student? Because remember, and my mom told me this when I was, 12, it is who you know, not what you know. And so keep that in mind, that you can always be measuring your kind of velocity, your throughput. But back to the question. So because there has been so much emphasis on outcomes in healthcare, it is necessarily and pretty predictably improving. Costs continue to climb, and Although there's been a lot of emphasis on pushing down costs, I don't know how effective and I'm sure there's data out there. So this is not, this is not my my focus, but I don't think costs are decreasing to the level that we were hoping that they would over the last, say, 8-10 years. But technology definitely is helping. There is more money that is being invested in innovation than there was 10 years ago. And that's a great sign, because if you're investing all of your money in just keeping the lights on and legacy systems, it's very difficult to innovate. And innovation is the absolute key to providing better outcomes for less cost.
All right, thank you. So Vanessa is asking, what is your least favorite part about your job?
Least favorite is probably budgeting. But it's necessary no matter where you are. It is going to be an important part. Everything from the president of a consulting company to an individual contributor, all should be concerned about what is it costing to provide this service. It's sometimes a painful process, especially as budgets can be compressed. When you feel like you need to spend more money in order to make this piece of your practice or this service better, but the money just isn't there, you've got to make some difficult decisions. So that is probably one of the things I least like to do, but it's an important part of the job.
For sure, it's the necessary evil, but it's also the problem solver's hardest thing, because you know the solution, but if the money's not there.
That is right. That is right.
All right, so we're moving on to Kevin. Now, earlier you talked about your passion for the industry, for the field, and Kevin wants to go a little deeper into that. He asks, why did you choose this particular career, and what makes you enjoy it so much now?
So I think that it started out as a way to just kind of make some money on the side while I was going to school, but the constant challenge of a new problem, right? Because different clients have different issues, and so when I started out, it was wow, I have the capability of thinking on my feet. And although that is it was stressful, especially when I was younger. It was a stressful thing to do, but there was so much, it's just a rush to be able to go in pretty blind, right? Because you're walking into a room with maybe a business analyst or a director of technology that's been there for 5 years, right? But you're there for a reason. You are being paid a premium as a consultant to come in and understand and solve problems. And if you can hone in that skill, it will serve you very, very well. But that's what I really, really enjoyed, was that change. And so, whether I was working on Homeland Security or, in finance or quick service restaurants or hospitality, healthcare, the challenges had some kind of foundational similarity, but it was always a different application. And so I've never been bored in my life. Even when I woke up for 6 years doing the same role for the same company, it was never the same, the same day. There were always new challenges to solve, and that's what's really been so exciting for me. And it's one of the reasons I jumped back into consulting, is just because of that variability.
Very nice. So you touched on some of these things that our next question is about. Shanice is asking, what special qualities does a person need to be a good fit for your position, both personal and professional? So maybe just two each, a personal and professional, that makes a good fit for a president of nearshore or like company.
So I think an empathetic listener is very, very key. And that I go back to that listening to understand. When you're in my role, you are more often dealing with challenges that are maybe political or human interactions, right? That have to be managed. And in order to do that well, you really have to try to put yourself in people's shoes and make sure that they know that you're listening and are trying to understand their perspective. That takes a lot of patience, and but it's very rewarding when you do it well, and you're and you can see that there's appreciation on the other side. Professionally, I think problem solving is something that I've talked about. Focus, I think, to be successful in really any business, but especially when you are consulting with companies of all shapes and sizes, you need to know what you do well and when to say no. That is not something that we do, and I don't want to pretend that we would do a good job there, because we don't have this type of practice that is established. It always makes me think, okay, should we be developing this practice, right? If we've got enough people asking for it, I want to be able to meet that demand. But the focus and the ability to say, you know what, that is not for us an ideal client profile. It is something that is really important as well.
Okay, so we're going to rewind again a little bit. You did talk about how you transitioned from that, IT into the healthcare. How did you find out about the healthcare side of the information technology, information management?
So there was a focus on that in some of the studies that I did in the graduate program. So I was exposed to big data and the kind of beginnings of population health and those kinds of practices. And so I, immediately kind of gravitated to that interest, because I felt like there was so much good that could be done by giving practitioners tools that help them make better decisions. It also helped. I had a very, very close friend who started a software development company right out of school that had a lot to do with hospital data, visit data, drug data. So I got to work with him on a strategy for rolling out those services. And so my education set me up to be open to, understand how important informatics, can be when it comes to efficiencies and practitioners, giving them the tools that give them the opportunity to spend more time with patients, for instance. So I was exposed pretty early in my graduate studies to healthcare technology and data, with big data, population health, and that was, I've just gravitated there ever since.
Thank you. So I think we've got time for about 2 more questions. The first one comes from Clint. As a CIO, what were some of the things that the executive team struggled with together, right? And then what was the strength that you experienced as part of that executive team?
That's a great question. So IT at a healthcare provider is a cost. Okay, IT, you don't make money for the healthcare provider. And so that was one of the, and I was very, very familiar with that, right? Because of the consulting work that I had done. So I knew going in that although my understanding of the technology and what it was going to take to successfully deliver, the patient care through these technology tools and protecting health data, that's second nature to me. But to our chief nursing officer or our chief operating officer, IT just had to work, right? That was really all they cared about. And so coming to the table with not only keeping the lights on and showing stability and having uptime and all of those kinds of things that were kind of a given or else I would lose my job, coming to that organization and explaining how technology can better the care that we were giving was big for them to see somebody who came in and was not just spending money on technology for technology's sake, but really was looking at how can we help serve our resident population better. And again, it goes back to, I was listening to them, right? What is it that they need? What have they experienced in running care centers that maybe I listened to those challenges. They may not say, hey, Mark, what do you think is an IT solution for this? That wasn't how the conversations went, right? It was, we're getting together an executive team, we're discussing these challenges. And then it was up to me to say, well, I've seen it done this way. I've applied some tools in this way in some hospitals that I've worked with in the past. What do you think about trying this approach? And so, it goes back to listening to understand what the challenges are. That was a huge part of being a trusted consultant, if you will, on the executive team at the healthcare provider.
Very nice. That listening skill will likely be a part
I know I've said that about 1 billion times.
No, I mean, it's great though. It's a good point. And I appreciate that you can apply it in so many different areas of your career. So we've got one last question for you, at least for your time today, from Jennifer. Can you give us any advice on how newly graduated students can tackle the HIM field with little to no experience?
So yeah, that's the internship program that you all have is just phenomenal. So take advantage of that if you can. You'll get real world experience and you'll get exposed to people who've been solving those problems for a long time. I know that with COVID, it is much more difficult for that collaboration to happen in person. But look for opportunities to solve problems. I've been for the longest time worked with the Small Business Administration here in the Central Florida area, and have loved some of the work that I've done on the boards where it's just an opportunity, and you all are in a space where you immediately bring some credibility and some knowledge that business people don't necessarily have. So look for an opportunity to network and volunteer with companies that need help in the IT space. They may be trying to grow from a $3 million company to a $10 million company. Don't sell yourself short. You are learning things that business owners don't have the time to think about. And so, get out there and figure out how you can help in your local community. And it's not even local community anymore. I mean, there's a lot that can be done remotely. That is one of the hugest impacts on the workforce, I think, that COVID is going to bring from at least from that aspect, is our understanding and ability to work remotely opens up and a lot of opportunities. And so, keep that in mind. Just get involved, get involved and try to help local businesses. For
sure. Thank you so much, Mark, for your insight. This has been so enlightening and I know so great for our students. This does conclude our interview for today. I really hope in the future we can have you back, and I hope we can do these in person in the future.
It's me too.
Hopefully we'll get that solved. But again, thank you to all of our attendees. I'm so sorry to some of the students that didn't get to get their questions answered, but we can probably follow up later and get that taken care of. Again, Mark, thank you for your time. It was fantastic.
Thanks. It was great being here. Great to talk with you.
Awesome. All right, everyone, have a great day. We'll see you on the next webinar Wednesday.